Have you ever noticed how the person predicting doom and gloom always sounds so smart, so insightful? Meanwhile, the optimist, the one who says things are probably going to work out, they kind of sound like they're trying to sell you something. Well, today we're diving deep into that exact idea, pulling from the 17th chapter of Morgan Housel's brilliant book, The Psychology of Money, to figure out why pessimism is just so seductive. And this quote, it nails it, doesn't it? A warning feels like a genuine act of concern. Someone's looking out for you. But a hopeful forecast? Our brains immediately get suspicious. This one paradox really shapes how we see the world, especially when it comes to our money, and we're about to unpack exactly why. Okay, so let's get right into it with a wild, real-world example of just how powerful a gloomy prediction can be, especially when it lands on the world's biggest stage. I want you to just try and picture this for a second. It's December 2008. The global financial system is absolutely imploding. Lehman Brothers is gone. Fear is everywhere. And right then, on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, arguably the most important financial newspaper on the planet, a story hits that pours gasoline on the fire. The story was about this professor who predicted the complete and total collapse of the United States. And not, in some far-off, distant future, but within 2 years. Now, this wasn't some crazy post on a forgotten corner of the internet. This was a front-page story treated with real seriousness right at the peak of global panic. And he had details. This wasn't just a vague warning. He had the whole country carved up and handed out. California goes to China, Texas to Mexico, Alaska, well, that goes back to Russia. It sounds absolutely absurd now, but at that moment, in that climate of fear, this extreme pessimism was given a massive platform because it felt so serious, so weighty. And that really brings us to the key question, right? Think about it. When's the last time you saw a headline screaming about a wildly optimistic prediction? Imagine it's 1946. Japan is in ruins after the war. If some academic had predicted it would become one of the world's great economic superpowers, they'd have been laughed off the stage. And yet, that's exactly what happened. We treat doom as serious analysis, but we treat extreme optimism as pure fantasy. Now, before we go any further, it's super important we get on the same page about what optimism actually means in this context. We are not talking about blind faith or just ignoring problems. This is the real definition we're working with. True financial optimism is simply the belief that the long-term odds are stacked in your favor. It fully accepts that, there are going to be recessions, bear markets, and all sorts of terrible setbacks. But it's also a rational belief that over the long arc of history, the general direction of growth is up. I just love this quote from the amazing statistician Hans Rosling. He's not talking about wishful thinking. He's talking about possibilities that are grounded in reality and data. Being an optimist or a possibilist is about recognizing that humans, for all our faults, are actually pretty darn good at solving problems and creating new things over time. It's a rational bet, not an emotional one. Okay, so if optimism is the more rational bet, why do we find pessimism so compelling? Why does bad news have such a powerful grip on our attention? Well, the book breaks it down into 3 really core, really human reasons. So here they are. First, bad news just feels more urgent because it could affect anyone and everyone, so it grabs our attention. Second, pessimists tend to draw straight lines, assuming today's problems will go on forever and forgetting our incredible ability to adapt. And finally, there's a mismatch in timing. Progress is slow and quiet, but setbacks are sudden and loud. You see this every single day in the news, right? The market goes up 1%, it's a minor note. The market drops 1%, it's breaking news, giant red letters, dramatic music. Bad news signals a potential threat, and our brains are hardwired from our caveman days to pay way more attention to the lion in the grass than the beautiful sunset. It's a survival instinct. And that leads us right into the second big point, adaptation. Pessimists forget we adapt. Take the peak oil scare. In 2008, with oil prices through the roof, the simple, pessimistic forecast was, we're running out. But that's not how humans or markets work. Those crazy high prices created a gigantic financial incentive for people to find new ways to get oil. The problem itself spurred the innovation that solved it. And once you look at the result, it's staggering. Far from running out, U.S. oil production more than doubled in about a decade. This is the whole ballgame right here. A pessimist sees a problem and assumes it's a permanent roadblock. An optimist sees a problem and assumes people will be motivated to find a way around it. And history shows the optimists have a pretty good track record. And now for the final, and maybe the most powerful, reason pessimism is so seductive.
It all comes down to timing, the speed of progress versus the speed of destruction. Let's talk about the airplane, one of the single most important inventions in human history, right? It happened in 1903, but it was so gradual, so quiet, that for almost 5 years, the world just kind of shrugged. It was seen as a neat trick, a hobby. Progress is often like that, a million tiny steps forward that are almost invisible while they're happening.
But destruction? Destruction is almost always sudden. A market crash, a natural disaster, a corporate scandal. These things happen in an instant. They're loud, dramatic, and impossible to look away from. Our attention is naturally hijacked by the sudden explosion, not the slow, quiet build. Now look at this number, -70%. What is that? Well, since 1965, the age-adjusted death rate from heart disease in the US has fallen by over 70%. That's a stunning human achievement. This one single slow-moving trend saves about 500,000 American lives every single year. That's like preventing a massive catastrophe week after week after week. But because this victory didn't happen overnight with a big parade, it just doesn't make the news. It's the quiet, compounding magic of progress. And it's happening all around us, if we just learn to see it. So what's the big takeaway here? Look, the goal isn't to ignore risks. It's to understand why our brains are so drawn to pessimism, so we can see the world more clearly and react to things, well, more rationally. So with that in mind, I want to leave you with a couple of questions to chew on. Seriously, think about it for a minute. The last time you felt that knot in your stomach about your investments or the economy, was it a sudden market drop? A scary headline? My bet is it was something sudden, because that's what our brains are wired to notice and fear most. And now let's flip it around. This can be anything, in medicine, in technology, in your own community, maybe even in your own skills. When you start training yourself to spot the quiet, compounding gains, it's a really powerful antidote to the constant noise of pessimism. It helps you build that serious possibilist mindset. I would genuinely love to hear your answers to those two questions, so please drop them in the comments below. Let's get a conversation going. And of course, if this breakdown was helpful, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.